suspended consideration of the budget, right? It's the last hearing. So I move that we consider proposed Senate Resolution number 176, taking consideration proposed Senate Resolution 177. This is the resolution expressing the deepest sympathies and profound condolences of the Senate on the death of former Senate President, Honorable Juan Ponce Enrile, Mr. President. I believe it's fitting, and you agreed to this. You were the one who pushed this, that we take this up first hour today. So may we ask the Secretary, Mr. President, to read the title of the measure.
So we will accept that as a formal motion, Mr. Majority Leader. Any
so moved, Mr.
objection?
President.
Hearing none. Consideration of proposed Senate Resolution 176 is now in order. Secretary, will we read the title of the resolution?
Resolution expressing the deepest sympathies and profound condolences of the Senate on the death of former Senate President Honorable Juan Ponce Enrile.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'm making an appeal to all our colleagues that instead of sponsoring this measure today, because we have the budget deliberations at hand and several secretaries waiting, may we just approve this, of course, subject to style, and all those who wish to propose, of course, or give privileged speeches can do it on Wednesday. We have an ecological service for the good Senate President Enrile on Wednesday morning, I think at 9 a.m., Mr. President.
Yes, so we will just insert our sponsorship of the said resolution into the records of the Senate, and so
Yes.
the other members of the Senate.
Yes, myself as well, Mr. President. So with that,
Yes.
Mr. President, there being no member who wishes to sponsor and give any amendments, I move that we close both the sponsorship, period of sponsorship and period of amendments. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none. So closed.
Mr. President, I move that we adopt Senate Resolution number 176, taking consideration proposed Senate Resolution number 177. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Proposed Senate Resolution 176, subject to style and in consideration of Senate Resolution 177, is hereby adopted.
Thank you, and and may we make all members of the Senate, of course, Mr. President, as a co-sponsor of the measure.
All members of the Senate are all co-authors and co-sponsors of the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. And one of the reasons also why we need to approve it today is that so we can print it out and frame the parchment paper para maibigay po natin sa pamilya, Mr. President, itong darating na Wednesday. So with that, I move to resume consideration of House Bill number 4058 under Committee Report number 18. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved. Consideration of House Bill 4058 under Committee Report number 18 is in order.
Yes, the status of the measures, we're in the period of interpellation, Mr. President. We have the general principles on deck. We still have a few members who wish to interpellate. May we recognize the sponsor, Mr. President, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian. Yes, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, and to propose interpellation on the budget among the three good gentlemen and ladies that are here on the floor. Who would like to go first? No, because we have a list, but I think some of them don't wish to.
Well, we at this point, we recognize the chairman of the Committee on
Yes,
Finance,
Mr.
Senator Sherwin Gatchalian.
And to interpolate in the list, and I'll read it for the record, it's Senator Panfilo Lacson, Senator Alan Cayetano, Senator Marcos, Senator Legarda, Senator Ejercito, Senator Rafi Tulfo, Senator Hontiveros, and Senator Pangilinan. So, would any?
Senator Lacson has
will give way.
intimated that he will be interpolating around 4 o'clock.
Okay, Mr. President. So may we ask Senator Hontiveros? Yes, we'd like to recognize Senator Hontiveros, Mr. President.
Senator Risa Ontiveros is recognized to continue interpolations for House Bill 4058.
Salamat, Mr. President. So I guess I'm up again sooner than I expected. So magandang hapon muli, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to pose a shortened list of my remaining questions from our first round for this afternoon's plenary. So, una na po, Mr. Chair, Mr. President, on the Maharlika investment in the National Grid Corporation of the Philippines. Gusto natin maiwasan na masayang ang 19 billion pesos na investment na ginawa ng MIF sa NGCP para sa renewable energies. So maybe get an update from the Department of Finance on how the investment of Maharlika in the NGCP is doing, Mr. Chair.
So, insofar as the investment in NGCP via the holding company, which is, I believe, it's Synergy Grid. They're still doing the financial closing. So in the next few, I think, depending on how complicated and how long the discussions between the legal counsels of each entities, we're probably looking at first quarter to second quarter next year.
So yung 19 billion pesos po, Mr. Chair, hindi pa aktual na ipupuhunan na sa NGCP ng Maharlika kasi hindi pa na kompleto yung financial closing.
So, correct. So
Okay.
may mga negotiations pa hong mangyayari. So pwede pong magbago. Yun po yung estimated amounts, pero pwede pa hong magbago.
Okay. So ano po yung mga particular na ninenegosasyon sa ngayon at alin sa mga aspeto nung ikokompletong financial closing ang pwede pang magbago? At least yung pwede niyong sabihin po in plenary habang umaandar yung negosasyon, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, the valuation, Mr. President, can still change. So yun po yung isa sa mga ninegotiate between government, Maharlika, and Synergy Grid.
Okay. So pwedeng magbago pa yung valuation. Ibig sabihin pwedeng tumaas o even bumaba yung halaga na 19 billion pesos na investment, Mr. Chair.
Pwede pa ho, magbago ho yun.
Okay.
No?
Ano yung magiging basehan ng pagbago ng halagang iyon kung sakali?
Ang pwede hong maging dahilan ng pagbabago is, number one is the market value of the investment. Synergy Grid is a publicly listed company, so titignan rin po yung valuation nitong kumpanya. And then, of course, tinitignan rin po yung risk to the investment. So these are all factors na pwede pong magbago pa doon sa presyo po.
Ano po yung kinoconsider na mga risks sa negosasyon sa ngayon, Mr. Chair?
Well, typically, since this is a regulated entity, it's a regulatory risk, yung isa sa mga tinitignan. Of course, mga ganitong type of companies, they also rely on loans. So tinitignan rin po yung interest rate risk as well as currency risk. Kasi sa laki po ng investment, marami ho dito will be loan from the outside. No? So with the recent weakness in the peso, that's also another factor. No?
Okay, salamat Mr. Chair. Ito sana, isa sana sa kinokonsidera ng gobyerno sa pag-finalize ng financial closing dito. Anong ginagawa ng Maharlika Investment Fund in partnerships syempre sa Department of Energy at sa NGCP mismo? Anong ginagawa ng MIF para sa halip na coal-based electricity, renewable energies na kinontrata niya ang pwedeng i-transmit ng NGCP na in fact delinquent sa ngayon? Pwede po bang humingi sa kanila ng detailed technical report bilang bahagi din ng oversight ng Senado sa MIF, Mr. Chairman?
Insofar as NGCP and the transmission companies concerned, ang negosyo ho nila mag-transmit lang ng kuryente. So the contracting of the generation, typically ho, ang nagko-contract are the distribution utilities. So binabayaran lang po yung NGCP ng wheeling charge in terms of electricity transmission. Pero yung kontrata ho is between the distribution companies and also the generation companies. So it's the call of the distribution companies kung bibili ho sila ng mas maraming fossil fuel o mas maraming RE. Pero ngayon ho, meron ng RPS, Renewable Portfolio Standards, ang DOE. So they're mandated to contract 5% of their total electricity outputs from renewable energy. No? At tumataas ho yan over time. No?
Opo, Mr. Chair. At kasama naman ang DOE sa pag-finalize nung financial closing, di po ba?
Yeah, kasama ho sila. I think mostly on the technical aspect as well. Alam ho ni Senator Risa yung national security aspect of this asset. So I'm nagko-consult rin sila with DOE regarding this aspect as well.
Opo. In fact, Mr. Chair, hindi naman ako magtatanong tungkol sa, for once, no, na sa paulit-ulit nating pagtatalakay sa NGCP, hindi ko naman itatanong ngayon yung national security aspect. Mas yung dahil recently nagkakaroon ng mga problema na ipasok sa grid ang mga na-generate na renewable energies. And meron din pong recent policy shift sa Department of Energy na nababahala po yung mga renewable energy advocates. Alam po ito ng chairman na parang bibigyan ulit ng espasyo ang coal-based electricity sa kanyang dating preferred status, sa halip na mas i-push talaga yung pag-mainstream ng RE sa ating energy mix, simula pa lang dun sa pag-upload sa grid. So pwede po kayang at least mai-communicate ng DBCC at ng chair natin itong concern. Nauulitin ko rin naman dun sa pagtalakay natin sa DOE budget na gawing explicitly part ng financial closing nung Maharlika investment sa NGCP na matatransmit talaga ang renewable energies sa pamamagitan ng grid natin, Mr. Chair.
I suggest, Senator Risa, that we can take that topic up with the DOE.
Alright.
Alam ko ho yung tinutukoy ng ating senadora. Ito po yung coal moratorium na nagbigay ho sila ng additional qualification on the moratorium. Pag expansion, hindi na raw kasama sa moratorium. So ito alam ko ay maraming concern dito sa expansion ng kanilang moratorium. No? So pwede ho nating pag-usapan at talakayan during the budget ng DOE. But insofar as the transmission is concerned, ang transmission business is normally just transmitting electricity from the GenCo all the way to the DU, the distribution utilities. Ang distribution utilities ho talaga ang merong desisyon kung saan sila bibili ng kuryente o anong uring kuryente ang kanilang bibilin.
I understand, Mr. Chair. But then again, certain language can be introduced dun sa financial closing on the part of national government para higit na i-encourage yung pagpapapasok ng renewable energy sa grid natin. In the detailed, pwede po bang makatanggap ang Senado ng detailed technical report bilang tulong sa atin, sa oversight natin sa Maharlika moving forward, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, andito po ang si Secretary Recto who sits as an ex officio chairman of the Maharlika. So pwede ho silang magbigay ng mga technical reports. For example, maganda ho yung tanong niyo, yung evaluation report, kung ano ba ang ginamit nilang evaluation methodology on their investment, as well as beyond the evaluation. For example ho, ano ba ang, from a national security aspect, ano ba ang benefit ho sa atin. No? So we can request a report in confidence. I'm sure confidential
Sure,
yan,
Mr.
na
Chair.
isubmit ho sa Senado.
Okay, maraming salamat po, Mr. Chair. Dako naman po ako sa technical smuggling na baka itanong din ni Senator Pangilinan at gayon din nating lahat sa pagtalakay sa DA budget. So, malaking halaga ang nawawalang revenues at negatively affected ang ating mga magsasaka dahil sa pag-misdeclare ng mas mababang kalidad at halaga para sa ating mga ini-import na bigas. So, ang pagresolba ng issue nitong technical smuggling, ito po ba ay nasa taas ng priorities ni Commissioner Nepomuceno? At ano yung magiging clear milestones nila para sabihin na nasosolve na natin itong walang kamatayang age-old problem na to, Mr. Chair?
I joined the Senator Risa, the good lady from Banay, to emphasize on curbing technical smuggling and smuggling in general in our country. Talagang wala hong panalo sa smuggling dahil talo na ho ang farmers ho natin, tapos wala pa tayong revenues na kukuha. No? So, hindi ho talaga tayo, wala hong nagbe-beneficyo ho dyan. Medyo bumababa ho yung presyo pero hindi naman sustainable dahil maraming farmers ho ang nadi-displace. So, sa BOC naman, in fairness to them ho, talagang tuloy-tuloy po yung kanilang pagsugpo dito po sa smuggling sa ating bansa. So to date, ang to date po ang value ng na-seize na goods ho nila is about 4.7 billion pesos po. Sari-sari na ho to. May cigarettes, mackerel, onions, vape. So, malaki-laki na rin po yung kanilang na-seize na mga smuggled goods.
At sa mga priorities po ni Commissioner Nepomuceno, nasa taas ba or top 3 or top 5 yung pag-solve ng technical smuggling, Mr. Chair?
Nasa ano ho to, priority, nasa top 1. Sabi ho sa akin ni Commissioner Nepomuceno na may explicit instruction ng ating Pangulo na habulin ho talaga yung mga smugglers. At hindi lang po ma-seizing goods, kung hindi kasuhan at siguraduhin manalo tayo sa kaso. Pero I remember during sa Ways and Means Committee hearing a few days ago, meron ho tayong mga batas na dapat ho rin ayusin. I remember sabi ho ni Commissioner Nepomuceno, marami sa mga nahuhuli nila ang mga consignee, mga driver, mga kasambahay. So hindi ho sinusulat yung mga totoong consignee. So dapat ho talaga i-revisit yung mga batas ho natin para po habulin yung mga totoong smuggler. Hindi lang po yung naglalagay lang ho sila kung sino-sino as consignee para hindi ho sila makasuhan.
And I think sinimulan din nating on our end, Mr. Chair, solusyonan yan, lalo na halimbawa nung ipinasa natin yung anti-economic sabotage law na may marami at mahalagang input din mismo ang Bureau of Customs.
Correct. So isa rin yung sa mga gagamitin nila o ginagamit na batas para po habulin yung mga smugglers po.
And mabuting mabalitaan na number 1 priority itong pagsulba ng issue ng technical smuggling ni na Commissioner Nepomuceno. Ano yung magiging milestones nila sa pag-achieve nung number 1 priority na iyan? Clear milestones para sabihin na achieve nila, Mr. Chair.
Aside from doon po sa mga seizures na ginagawa nila, yung prosecution as well as conviction. Admittedly ho, like for example, nung nagkaroon ho kami ng hearing tungkol sa smuggled tobacco at vape, admittedly napakababa po ang conviction. Mataas po ang seizure, mga thousands. Natatandaan ko, thousands po yung seizure. Pero pag lumakad ho tayo doon sa wheels of justice hanggang conviction, less than 1% lang ho nako-convict. No? So maraming nahuhuli pero halos kakaunti lang po yung conviction. So yun po yung challenge natin sa BOC and sa BIR na taasan po yung conviction. Together with the DOJ, of course.
Yes.
Talagang dapat ho mayroon pong makulong rin sa mga smugglers.
Salamat, Mr. Chair. At nung binanggit niyo yung DOJ, naalala ko, sinabi din ng dating DOJ Secretary na at that time, several months ago, pinagtatrabaho niya yung mga tao ng DOJ, halimbawa sa Philippine National Police, para yung case build-up ay mas mahigpit. And I don't know, perhaps kung ginagawa na rin nila or pinaplanong gawin DOJ with BOC para itaas nga po yung percentage ng convictions, Mr. Chair.
Meron pala ho silang pending na MOA to create this BOC-DOJ
okay.
joint activity against smuggling. This is during the term of Ombudsman Remulla. No? So medyo na antala lang ho dahil sa pagkakapalit po ng kalihim doon. Pero pinupersuho nila yan para magkaroon ho sila ng mas matibay pa na joint activity between the entity that seizes the goods and the entity that files the case, and eventually, hopefully, manalo po tayo doon sa kaso.
Hopefully, Mr. Chair. And at least yung dating SOJ ay yung ombudsman
Yes,
ngayon.
oo.
So even
Correct.
on the personal level,
Yeah.
mas may paraan na kumpletuhin itong
Yeah. Kanina po nakita ko
proseso
na
nito.
nag-oath na po yung bagong Secretary of Justice, si
I
Secretary
see.
Vida. So I think pwede na pong i-revive ulit ng BOC yung kanilang plano na magkaroon ng mas maigting na relasyon sa pagitan ng BOC at DOJ.
And I wish them the best in that, Mr. Chair, para ma-achieve talaga yung sinasabing number one priority.
Correct.
Opo.
At may makulong.
At
Kasi
may
yun ang
makulong.
problema. Maraming nahuhuli, walang nakukulong eh.
Opo. At dapat hindi lang po yung mga bodegero, mga,
Oh, yeah.
kung
Correct.
sinong kunyaring signees
Correct.
ng mga smugglers, Mr. Chair. Salamat po. Dako naman po ako dun sa GSIS School Buildings Insurance. Maraming mga eskwelahan, alam po nating lahat, ang nasalanta ng mga nakaraang lindol at bagyo. However, as was, I believe, the practice before, our schools should be covered by the National Indemnity Insurance Program, o NIIP, and international reinsurance. Tama po ba? Medyo kinakabahan po ako, Mr. Chair, kasi wala po akong naririnig na balita tungkol dyan ngayon, pagkatapos ng Tino at Uwan at pagkatapos ng Lindol, Mr. Chair.
Actually, meron ho yung pondo sa unprogrammed funds. Ito po yung insurance premium for government assets, particularly for school buildings. I remember nung hearing po, yun po yung isa sa mga katanungan. So ito po ay tinransfer ho natin from unprogrammed funds to program,
Okay.
to a tune of 1 billion pesos po. No? So at least so mapapondohan na siya. At kasi ang konteksto ngayon, ang dami hong bagyo at lindol at nakita ko po sa mga reports na marami tayong classrooms rin nasisira. So pwede na po nilang makuha yung insurance payments para ma-repair po yung classrooms. Ang challenge lang po yung bilis. Alam ko medyo matagal-tagal ho pag-release nitong pondo, pero at least ho pwede na sila mag-claim doon po sa insurance.
Okay. Salamat, Mr. Chair. It's also good to know na isa tong konkretong instance na inilipat ang isang item mula sa unprogrammed papunta dun sa programmed. Kasi maalala natin kung na yung unprogrammed appropriations ang naging isa sa malalaking issue tungkol sa current 2025 budget. And in fact, isa sa mga dahilan na ako at si dating Minority Leader Coco Pimentel ay bumoto ng no sa 2025 budget. So yung current programmed funds para sa school buildings insurance na nagkakahalaga ng 1 billion pesos, sasapat na po ba ito? I almost know the answer, Mr. Chair, but so follow-up is at least anong percentage ng insurance sa damaged or destroyed buildings ang masasagot nitong halaga, Mr. Chair?
doon po sa existing yung this year 2025 according to our National Treasurer, kaya naman pong ibayaran ng mga damaged schools, no?
Okay.
So may mga binigay na data sa atin. Ang hindi naka. Actually, ang good news,
Naku, ibig sabihin may bad news, Mr. Chair.
actually,
let's hear the
napag-usapan
good
namin
news
sa
first.
hearing to ni National Treasurer. Ang good news, so kaya naman with the current 2 billion premium payments to GSIS to cover all the claims of DepEd insofar as classroom is concerned. No, kaya naman po kasi malaki po inilaan ho natin, almost 2 billion in terms of premium payments.
Okay.
Ang bad news ho, matagal lang ma-access. No?
Gaano katagal yung matagal, Mr. Chair?
Actually, parang more than... Yeah, kasi ang proseso ho kasi, pag may bagyo, si DepEd pupunta ho sa site, i-assess niya. Pag may cost na ho, ibibigay sa GSIS. Of course, GSIS pupunta doon to validate po yung cost. So typically, umaabot raw na more than a year para
Oh my
makuha yung claims.
Okay.
No? So, iyan din po isang problema dahil kung 1 year ho makukuha yung claims, in the meantime, wala tayong classrooms.
Exactly,
no?
Mr.
So, kaya makikita ho natin this time in the proposed budget ho, we also increase the budget for repairs and maintenance. Kasi may mga classrooms ho tayo na pwedeng gamitin, hindi lang nagagamit dahil sira siya. No? So, yun po yung ano.
Wala po bang pamamaraan po kahit sa ilalim ng dating NIIP na sa ganitong ka-urgent na emergency situation na hindi lang isa o iilang school buildings ang apektado kundi widespread ang damage or destruction na medyo pwedeng mapabilis? Or Mr. Chair, yung sinabi niyo pong 2 billion pesos kayang sagutin ng in the magnitude of 2 billion pesos yung premium payments ng GSIS. Kung bukod pa po yun dun sa 1 billion pesos na inilipat sa programmed fund, I don't know, pwede po bang i-advance muna yung 1B and then i-cover within 1 year at the latest ng GSIS? Ibig sabihin, ano po yung paraan na kaagad matulungan yung mga school buildings na mag-reconstruct o mag-repair, Mr. Chair?
Actually, Mr. President, Her Honor, kaya ho namin binawasan rin yung amounts from 2 billion to 1 billion kasi parang mas mabilis pa ho pag naglagay tayo ng 1 billion to repair of classrooms. Kasi kung mag-aantay ho tayo ng 1 year plus para makuha yung reimbursement o yung claims, tapos magre-repair pa lang tayo, napakatagal ho. No? So in the meantime, yung classrooms hindi ho nagagamit. So I think we should request for a report sa ating Bureau of Treasury kung magkaroon ng cost-benefit analysis and also a report whether itong binibigay natin sa GSIS in the form of premiums, talagang nakakatulong sa pag-re-repair ng ating mga classrooms. Kasi we need to assess, baka kung 1 year plus ho natin makukuha, napakatagal ho. Napakatagal. No? So, ang need po ng mga bata is immediately.
Ngayon.
Oo, ngayon. So,
May kasabihan pa nga, Mr. Chair, di ba? A child cannot wait for tomorrow.
Correct.
His name is today.
correct.
Opo.
I absolutely agree. So, we'll request for a separate briefing and report on this National Indemnity Insurance Program. Napag-usapan ho namin to during hearing, but
Opo.
we need to drill down pa kung ano ho dapat gawin. Kung effective ba siya or maybe a different package or a different arrangement with GSIS.
All right, Mr. Chair. Magpa-participate din po ako dyan. And
Yeah.
I hope remedial measures can be undertaken para kung mananatili pa rin itong napaka-importanteng function sa GSIS, ay mapabilis nga yung pag-extend niya ng service na ito sa mga eskwelahan na nasa ilalim din naman ng gobyerno natin, Mr. Chairman.
Apparently ho, itong program only started last year. So, meron pang mga, sabi sa akin ni National Treasurer, birth pains, meaning nag-a-adjust pa ho yung process. But it's a good concept, but we need to sit down and analyze whether it's worthwhile allocating 2 billion, 1 billion, 2 billion, nang napakatagal naman po makuha yung claims. No?
Yes. Well, I agree, Mr. Chair. Allocating billions or a sufficient amount for the upkeep, repair, reconstruction when necessary of school buildings sa ating natural disaster-ridden country, kailangan may paglalagakan talaga siya. And we have to find the best place, kung GSIS man yan or iba man yan, and for them to make a quick response.
Correct. I
Opo.
agree po.
Salamat, Mr. Chair. Dako naman po ako sa regional development councils and ang walang kamatayang flood control projects. So maalala natin na itinigil ng Department of Finance ang mahigit kumulang na 70 billion pesos na halaga ng flood control project sa 2025 GAA. So, nagkonsulta po ba ang DBM at saka ang DOF, Mr. Chair, sa DepDev at saka sa Regional Development Councils bago inaprubahan in the first place yung mga proyektong iyon? At ano po yung algorithm naman ng DepDev para mag-conclude na itong proyekto, nag-a-align nga po siya sa River Basin Master Plans, Mr. Chair?
Unfortunately po, sabi sa akin ho ni Secretary Balisacan na itong flood control hindi ho dumadaan po sa DepDev. No? Dahil po ang kanilang threshold, pag PPP projects, about 15 billion po. So anything below 15 billion, hindi na ho dadaan sa kanila pag PPP. Pagdating naman po sa GAA projects, 5 billion po ang threshold. So anything below that, hindi na ho dumadaan sa kanila. So hindi ho nila nare-review yung mga plano pag mas maliit po yung mga projects na ina-allocate po ng Department of Public Works.
And alam naman po natin, Mr. Chair, yung napagalaman din po natin kahit sa Senate Blue Ribbon Committee investigations, yung notorious practice of so-called splitting projects. Opo, para maging mas mababa, mag-slip under ng threshold na subject na sa vetting ng DepDev or ng ibang
Sa national expenditure
agencies.
ho, makikita na ho natin doon yung ibang mga projects na na-identify ho natin. No? Isang project lang ho siya pero napuputol siya into many phases. No?
Yes, Mr. Chair. At sa ganung paraan din, hindi lang DepDev ang nalulusutan, pati ibang mga ahensya, halimbawa tulad ng DENR, dahil spinlit ang isang halimbawa, mahabang daan, halimbawa sa isang mountain range, may nadadaan ng mga ecologically sensitive areas dahil bumababa di umano ang financial threshold nila, bumababa din equally yung eyes on the proposal ng iba't ibang mga ahensya. And ngayon kaya nadadagdagan yung pagtingin natin mismo na nagtatrabaho dito sa Senado bukod sa ating mga kababayan kung gaano kahalaga yung eyes particularly ng DepDev at ng mga regional development councils. So kung kung dadaan na yung ganitong mga, kahit yung ganitong mga proyekto sa DepDev at sa mga RDCs, ano yung meron na bang or ano yung maaring buwing algorithm ng DepDev para sabihin, okay, binet namin itong proposed project against yung, bawa, River Basin Master Plan and check, it will qualify, Mr. Chair.
Doon po sa mga pagdinig ho natin, nasabi ho ni Secretary Dizon na by 2027 ho, sisiguraduhin niya na maayos na ang proposals ng Department of Agriculture, Department of Public Works.
Balita yun, Mr. Chair.
No, malayo, ang layo. Oo. So,
2027.
kailangan inaayos ho nila first of all yung mga policies nila on local government coordination. Dapat ho may totoong shovel ready na, ibig sabihin may plano, may feasibility study, at inaayos na rin ho nila yung master plan for this project. So makakaasa ho tayo pagbigay ho nila ng budget for 2027, marami na pong reforma pagdating po sa propose ng project. And alam ko ang DepDev and ano ho rin sila, pinag-aaralan na rin nila ngayon yung mga master plans ng mga river basins ho natin. So kasama ho sila doon ho sa pag-aaral ho nitong mga river basins ho natin. Yung master plan po.
And I'm sure, Mr. Chair, and I hope kasama doon yung DNR kasi sinasabi din nila na hindi lang infrastructure-based solutions ang kailangan natin, dapat kasama at minsan, no, depende sa proyekto, nature-based ang solutions sa pagbabaha dito po sa ating bansa, Mr. Chair.
Actually, marami hong revelations nangyari dito sa flood control. Narinig ko, sinabi rin ni Secretary Dizon, marami sa mga flood control ni plano wala no? So kung plano wala, definitely yung master plan wala rin, no? So marami dito parang patse-patse po yung mga projects pero hindi alam kung talagang makakatulong o hindi. So ito po yung kinokorek ngayon ng DepDev, DNR as well as DPWH, no?
Salamat, Mr. Chair. Kasi yung sinabi niyong ganyang mga proyekto, walang engineering plan, may financial plan lang. Kaya po nagbunga ng hindi ng flood control kundi ng corruption at yung mga pagdurusang dinadaanan ng mga kababayan natin ngayon.
Mr. President, if I may interject.
Yes,
with the permission
Mr.
of,
President, Senator Estrada.
I think the presiding officer is busy.
Senator Estrada is recognized.
Thank you. Just only one question. Your Honor, kung magkakaroon ba ng partisipasyon ang Regional Development Council dito sa mga flood control projects, magkakaroon ba tayo ng mga ghost projects?
Kung tinitignan ho namin, yung batting average ng Regional Development Council, less than 30% lang po or around 30% ang projects na na-approve ng Regional Council na napopondohan ng GAA. So ang ibig sabihin ho dyan, kahit na ho nag-usap-usap yung mga LGUs, hindi ho napopondohan yung kanilang mga projects. But in a perfect world, sana ho ganun. No, dahil ang Regional Development Council, kasama doon ang LGUs, DPWH, DNR, lahat ng mga regional agencies nandoon ho. So doon sila dapat nag-uusap-usap kung ano po yung magandang project sa kanila.
Nung umpisa pa lang, nung maraming mga amendments sa mga kongresista, mga senador, mga flood control projects, dapat pala nagkaroon ng partisipasyon ang Regional Development Councils para hindi na tayo nagkakaroon ng ganitong klaseng problema. Dahil sino ba ang mga mastermind ng mga ghost projects? Di ba yung mga engineers dyan sa mga DPWH? Hindi naman mga senador, hindi naman mga congressman
Tama ho. Kailangan ho talaga, mas maganda ho talaga dumadaan sa Regional Development Council. Kahit na ho yung meron ko, kasi alam niyo naman, bilang dating mayor, meron tayong mga City Development Council, Provincial Development Council, kahit man lang dumaan doon para at least vetted and coordinated yung project.
Kasi sa pagkakalam ko, I'm sorry, Senator Risa, yung mga mayors na napaglaanan ng pondo ng mga flood control projects, hindi nila alam na meron silang mga flood control projects sa sarili nilang bayan. Am I correct? Di dapat naabisuhan yung mga local government units na meron silang ganitong klaseng flood control projects. Parang sa Quezon City na rinig ko na si Mayor Joy Belmonte hindi niya alam na mayroong ganitong klaseng project na flood control project sa kanyang kinasasakupan. Dapat talaga na bilang isang mayor o bilang isang governor o bilang isang local chief executive, alam nila kung ano nangyayari sa sarili nilang bayan o sarili nilang probinsya. Hindi yung nabubulagaan na lang sila. Oh, bakit meron palang flood control project dito? Hindi namin alam. Pala, ghost project na pala.
Tama ho, I agree with you, Senator Jinggoy. Lumabas yan sa marami nating pagdinig dito sa Senado. Katulad po yung sa Oriental Mindoro na billions yung project sa hometown ng governor pero hindi rin alam ng governor. No? So, hindi nako-coordinate po sa local government units itong mga project na ito. So, dapat po talaga ma-coordinate kasi at the end of the day, ang local government units ang sumasagot kung may problema doon sa lugar. Kung mayroong baha, kung mayroong ine-evacuate, sila ho ang sumasagot. No?
Dito ba sa 2026 budget, mayroong mga flood control projects?
Zero. Wala ho.
Zero.
Zero ho. Walang flood control.
Mabuti naman. Thank you very much, Senator Risa.
Very welcome, Mr. President and Senator Estrada. Sa DepDev pa rin po, Mr. Chair, tumitingin na po ba sila sa mga alternative ways para i-address yung flood damage? Halimbawa, pagbibigay daan sa ilog na dumaloy, sa halip na labanan ito o i-constrict ito o kaya pagpapalaki ng water retention capacities ng mga upstream swamps. Ang DepDev ba nagko-consider na rin ng mandatory insurance coverage against flood risks, Mr. Chair?
Doon po sa River Basin Master Plan, yan po ang plano ng DepDev this coming New Year na talaga hong maglabas na ng mga master plans. Sila na hong mag-spearhead per river basin so that itong master plan po ang susundan insofar as flood control projects are concerned. No? So, malaking endeavor ho yan, pero I believe na umpisa na yan in the past administrations. Kailangan lang po ma-update. So, yun po yung isa sa mga malaking aktibidad nila this coming New Year. Insofar as the insurance po, wala hong ganun na project po ang DepDev. I think pwedeng tignan yan ng DepDev. Tignan ho nila kung how we can inject an insurance coverage dun po sa mga flood-prone areas or affected areas by mga ganitong climate change.
Salamat, Mr. Chair. Or baka pwede rin nilang pag-aralan, pagtulungan ito dun sa binanggit nyo kaninang review ng GSIS, NIIP, or iba pang pwedeng bahay ng insurance para naman dun sa school buildings. Kasi lahat naman affected nitong mga disaster cost na mga pagbabaha. And I hope as far as yung New Year's plan ng DepDev na talagang i-champion yung River Basin Master Plans, I presume and I hope na katrabaho nila doon yung DENR na matagal na rin. Yun na nga po, may sinusulong na mga nature-based solutions and master plans to if not completely prevent, at least i-mitigate yung epekto, masasamang epekto ng mga natural disasters na ito.
Wake-up call ho talaga itong nangyari ho sa
Sobra
atin
po.
at dapat umpisahan ho natin to sa pagpaplano dahil kung wala hong plano talagang papatsi-patsi lang po yung project at hindi ho nakikita yung solusyon. No? So yan po naman ang plano ng DepDev.
At yun naman po yung traditional na kumbaga core competency niya, core business niya sa buong gobyerno. No? Gumagabay, palagay ko sa lahat ng opisina sa executive na ayusin yung buong development process mula pagpaplano hanggang sa evaluation at pagpaplano muli cyclically, Mr. Chair.
Sabi ho sa akin ni Secretary Balisacan na part of the charter of the DepDev is master planning. No? So linagay ho sa batas talaga na mandato na nila ngayon na tulungan yung iba't ibang agency o mag-spearhead pagdating ho sa master plans.
Exactly, Mr. Chair. Salamat po para doon. Huling tanong ko po sa round na to tungkol sa veto recommendation ng DepDev pa rin. Sa pagtatayo po ng bagong Department of Economy, Planning and Development, pinaglaban natin ang kapangyarihan ng DepDev na magrekomenda sa Presidente kung may aalisin na mga proyektong di sang-ayon sa mga national priorities. And ngayon, syempre, nakatingin tayo dun sa yung Philippine Development Plan, ambisyon 2030, 2040. So, sa kasalukuyang budget ng DepDev, sapat na ba ang pondo at staffing para palakasin ang teknikal na kapasidad ng Regional Development Councils na makapagrekomenda ng pag-veto sa mga hindi kinakailangang or makasasama pang ang mga proyekto, Mr. Chair?
Actually, admittedly ho, kulang pa sa manpower and capability and DepDev pagdating ho sa monitoring and evaluation ng mga projects. Kasi part ng mandato ho nila, kung napondohan natin, nagmo-monitor at nag-evaluate rin sila dun sa mga projects, lalo na yung mga malalaking pong projects. So admittedly, kulang ho sila sa manpower and capability per region. Yun naman po ang dinidevelop nila over time.
Okay. Very well noted, Mr. Chair. Magsususpend muna ako, Mr. President. Maraming salamat, Mr.
Thank you
Chair.
very much,
May ilang
Senator
huling
Risa.
tanong na lang ako sa susunod kong round. Pagkatapos may mag-take turns din po yung ibang mga colleagues natin.
Maraming
Salamat po.
Thank you, Senator Antiveros, Majority Leader. Senator Lauren Legardas, I believe, is next to interpellate. Senator Legardas, recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I would like to commend the chair who has been so diligent in attending all the subcommittee meetings as well. And I am grateful to have been by his side in most times where I chair the committee or even those that I don't chair. And so these questions are those perhaps that were not fully clarified during the DBCC or during our respective hearings to help clarify in our minds. And second, to improve the budget further because we know it's still a long process till the second week of December. Having said that, Mr. President, may I start with the National Expenditure Program as submitted by the President that was used as the basis of our budget hearings because at that time the GAB was not yet transmitted to the Senate. This was used by the Committee on Finance. And eventually, of course, the GAB was transmitted to the Senate. And in my understanding, the basis of the Committee on Finance report, as we have it, would have been the NEP. Let us clarify that. I mean, at least our hearings, where we ask the questions of the committees and the agencies. So from the DBCC to the individual agencies, the House General Appropriations Bill was not yet transmitted, but then the committee report of the Senate, in my understanding, we used the NEP or did not follow the GAB insofar as the realignments of the DPWH. Let me just clarify what I mean. Because during the budget hearing of the DPWH, we were informed that the budget of that agency, upon its own recommendation, was pruned from 880 billion to 624.48 billion, or a reduction of 255.5 billion. So to have a total picture of the House GAB and for transparency, before we proceed to deliberate on the budget of each agency, may this representation, Mr. President, try to understand. Since the programmed new appropriations under the NEP that was submitted and the GAB that was transmitted to the Senate by the House carries the same amount of 4.4, more or less, trillion, can we say that the cuts in the DPWH budget were realigned to other agencies, programs, activities, departments, and funds. Kindly inform the Senate which agencies, departments, or funds were augmented from the DPWH cut of 255.5 billion and for what purpose? And may we know the recommendations of the Committee on Finance on the said increases? That's so that we understand it, because people ask us, it was cut there, there was a recommendation, a list in the House GAB, the Senate is adopting the House GAB, or do we have another recommendation for the cut of 255? I stop there, but will pursue that after I hear the response of the chair. Thank you, Mr.
Let me just clarify. The question is, what happened to the
255.
cut, the 255?
We actually talked about this in
Yes.
private, Mr. Chair. Bear with me. I just wanted to be transparent.
Correct.
Yes, pero pinag-usapan na natin
Tama
yan.
po.
And I think I mentioned to you that I will ask this. Thank
Yes.
you, Mr. Chair.
The NEP was cut by 255 billion to be exact, by the House of Representatives, and it was reflected in the General Appropriations Bill. And the 255 was distributed in various departments in terms of increases. And they also have several decreases within the agencies. So in short, in 255 po, the 255 was spread to various agencies in the form of increases.
Yes, you're correct, Mr. President. Even some of our colleagues would be asking us in the process, saan napunta yung 255? Perhaps it would be best to put into the record, because from here up to the BICAM, it would change again. And I think we owe it to everyone to say where the 255 billion that was cut from that agency, where was it actually placed? I think we have a list of that. Thank
Mr.
you.
President, the good thing about this budget cycle is everything is uploaded. So
Yes.
the NEP is already available in the website of the DBM. The GAB is already available in the website of both the House and the Senate. And then our very own committee report is also available in the website. So you can now see the movements between the NEP, the GAB, and also the Senate committee report. There are a lot of changes in the GAB, but for example, I'll just cite some examples. This is in the GAB. The Department of Agriculture increased by 28 billion. The Department of Education increased by 39 billion. The increase. Neto, yeah. Increase, yeah. The Department of Health increased by 31 billion. So these are the large amounts. The Department of Labor increased by 13 billion. So marami ho siya, no? We're talking about DSWD increased by 36 billion. These are the bigger changes in the GAB, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President. I would like to clarify whether these items that you mentioned came from the cut from the flood control of the DPWH.
Yes, it came from
Yes.
that. That's the primary source, Mr. President.
Yes.
But in between, they have also cuts in the departments, Mr. President. But the primary source is that cut, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President. And what you put into the record are the realignments done from the flood control cut in the HGAB, or is the Senate version? Because did we take into consideration the realignments of the 255 from the DPWH cut, or is this the House list or the Senate list of where we put the 255? Just for clarity.
Just to add, another big change from the 255 is the PhilHealth subsidy to a tune about 60 billion, Mr. President. So those are the big, the changes I mentioned are the big ticket items that were taken from the 255, Mr. President.
The good chair, Mr. President, is referring to the list in the House GAB.
Yes, Mr. President.
Yes.
Correct.
So that it's clear.
Yes.
The 255 was placed among others, but if you total that, it's not yet 255, but that's some of the items mentioned.
The big ticket
by Your
items,
Honor.
Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President. Okay. So this 255 cut of DPWH, and I commend the chair for finding double items and those without coordinates. If I'm not mistaken, you found an additional 55 billion cut by the committee, and the realignment to DepEd for school buildings, for state universities and colleges, and for the OTR. May we know now how much is the infrastructure budget for 2026, which was pegged at 1.55 trillion in the NEP? What I'm asking is, if it was 1.55 trillion in the NEP, having realigned some infrastructure to other, perhaps soft, perhaps also infrastructure, is the Senate committee report also aligned with the infrastructure level in the NEP, Mr. President, or is it lower than?
Mr. President, in our computation, the infrastructure spending is about 1.4 trillion pesos, Mr. President. It was down from about 1.5 trillion pesos, Mr. President.
Thank you for that information, Mr. President. So just so that it's clear, in the NEP, it was 1.55 trillion, and in the Senate committee report, it is down to 1.4 trillion.
Mr. President.
Yes. Thank you for that information. May we know now, Mr. President, what are the measures, interventions that the economic team, the executive department will adopt to ensure that the GDP target growth of 5.5 to 6.5 as originally conveyed in our DBCC will be achieved, if at all? We realize and we know that they've tried to scale it down. We must find out, it's very challenging, almost near to impossible, that we must grow 7% in the fourth quarter to achieve the 5.5% growth rate, which was originally targeted by the end of the year. So may we just come to reality and try to understand in this last quarter what growth are we targeting and what do we need? Because if we are to recall our projections for 2025, we had projected a growth rate of 5.5. That means in this fourth quarter, because of the lag of the previous quarters, we'd have to grow 7%, which is, I think, very unrealistic and near to impossible. Yes.
I agree, Mr. President. I think hitting 6%, even 6% for the last quarter, it's impossible already, Mr. President. To date, for the first three quarters, we grew at around 5%. and we're looking at hitting 5.5%, no, by end of the year. No, so, but it's really a challenge right now, Mr. President, because of the weather conditions and also what happened in Visayas, and also what the various natural disasters that we experienced, Mr.
Yes.
President.
Thank you for that, Mr. President. And
And
therefore,
also the flood control controversy, Mr. President. That's also another factor that is affecting our economy, Mr.
yes.
President.
Having said that, Mr. President, thank you for your candor and your honesty. May we know what the executive department is doing, the economic team, as interventions and measures to be able to grow our economy, although we know that the 7% is unachievable?
Mr. President, Secretary Recto mentioned that they're spending as programmed this year. And of course, they're doing catch-up programs also to spend as fast as they can before the end of the year, because government spending is one of the big contributors to our economy, Mr. President.
Yes, may we know what kind of government spending? Is it spending on infrastructure, and what kind of infrastructure, Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. President, infrastructure is definitely what's in the budget or the GA right now. They're aim to spend it as fast as they can in the next 2 months. So infrastructures, repair, rehabilitation, classrooms, everything in the GAA, Mr. President. So at the same time, they're also ramping up spending on the other programs in the government. So meaning, Mr. President, they will drive the economic growth through efficient spending of resources in the last 2 months of the year, Mr. President. And of course, the biggest move will be regaining confidence to governance. So Secretary Recto is very clear that by the end of the year, people will be put in jail because of the issue, Mr. President.
Thank you for that, Mr. President. I was once in your seat for 5 years, and I would always, of course, try to say that, yes, more school buildings are being built. Yes, DOTR is building the regional airports. Yes, they're building more roads and bridges. But really, Mr. President, we know the truth. And everyone who sits in this room know the truth that the slowness, I can't find, yung kabagalan po ng sistema ay talagang nandyan. So, I accept your answer because I would have answered the same if I were defending the budget. And our colleagues beside you in the executive would say the same. But when we speak to each other at the back, I see Senator Recto nodding, he would say, ang bagal talaga. I don't have to put into the record our frustration in our committee hearings. Senator Bam, in his frustration, saw how slow, almost nil, was the construction of classrooms. We know how probably frustrated the DBM secretary is because they thought by ramping up infrastructure spending, it would lead to a greater robust economy, but it did not happen. So, may we know how are we supposed to believe your answer, Mr. President, which I would have said myself?
That's an excellent question, Mr. President.
Yes.
In fact, when we were consolidating the budget, we were surprised that, for example, HFEP, yung Health Facilities and Enhancement Fund, we were surprised that to date, zero pa ho ang na-allocate doon sa pondo na about 40?
Tama po kayo.
About
Yun po
14
ang ibig
billion,
kong sabihin na gusto kong
Mr.
marinig.
President. In terms of classroom, 22 pa lang ang nako-construct. In terms of health facilities, zero pa ho ang nako-construct. And end of the year na ho ngayon. No? So it's really, the spending is very dismal. And one of the things that we noticed, alam niyo ho to, Mr. President, Senator Lauren, is all the construction are centralized to DPWH. No? Naka-centralize ho yan sa DPWH. So, yung transfer lang ho ng pondo, the transfer from DepEd to DPWH already takes about 6 to 8 months. the transfer of funds from DOH all the way to DPWH also takes 6 to 8 months. So in this budget, we are liberalizing the construction of those facilities. I'll give you an example. In DepEd, we introduced a special provision wherein DepEd can now tap the private sector, the LGUs doing counterpart. They can also do PPPs to construct classrooms. The same with HFEP. The DOH can download funds to the LGU so that the LGUs can also construct. Yung TCAS naman, yung mga construction ng mga kampo ho natin, we gave it back to the Department of the DND, the Department of National Defense, so that they can do the construction on their own. So it's not centralized anymore. We liberalized the construction so that everyone can construct all at the same time.
Yes. Thank you for that answer, and appreciate the chair's intervention in the implementation of the budget, which will be contained in the GAA of 2026. However, my question earlier was, how are we going to increase spending and reach the highest possible growth rate para makahabol po sa susunod na kulang-kulang na 2 buwan na lang kung ang bagal nga ng pagpatupad ng mga proyekto sa lahat ng ahensya ng gobyerno. And I don't say this just for this year or last year or this administration. It's been like this for decades, Mr. President. Ang bagal-bagal ng whether it's education or health or infrastructure in the PWH, it's dismally low. So what kind of measures, interventions is the executive economic team doing to utilize the resources efficiently and effectively, Mr. Chair?
Another intervention, Mr. President, that ano nito, no? Nagawa na?
Ito, sir, nasa kanila na yung
Yeah.
pera. So, kailangan maubos nila.
Yeah. So the DBM already downloaded 1.3 trillion pesos to various agencies. So in other words, nasa agencies na ho yung pera, no, for the last quarter. So it's really, in other words, there's no more time lag insofar as documentation is concerned, because the money is now in the hands of the agencies, and the agencies' job now for the next 2 months is to spend, no, spend.
Wisely,
Yung gagawin nila.
yes.
Wisely, of course. No?
Yes. Thank you for that, Mr. President. Perhaps what we could do, which is part of your job as chair, is to not just wait for 1 year, perhaps at the very least a quarterly oversight on the spending and implementation, obligation disbursement, and actual oversight on the agencies lodged with the biggest allocations for infrastructure. So we see how the local economy is benefiting, if at all.
It's an excellent suggestion,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, that the oversight should not be limited or should not come at the end of the year. No, we can do it on a quarterly basis. So we'll
Even
practice
monthly,
that.
I will join you with monthly oversight.
Yeah.
Enero, ito. At kasasabihin po nila, wala pa. Hindi sa wala pa. Na-release na nga ng DBM ng last quarter. So ang gagamitin nila sa Enero, yung na-release ng 2025. So dapat ginagalaw na. So you can actually do monthly so that the agencies are on their toes.
Mr. President, we'll take that suggestion, and we'll take the excellent suggestion to heart, and next year we'll implement that.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, as we ourselves know, the government target, the projection of 5.5 to 6.5% projected GDP for this year, 2025, will not happen. May I know how the projected revenue collections and the fiscal deficit for 2025 will be affected? Because based on the 2025 BESF, when we started this year and during our DBCC, it was said that, and it's very clear, that 1% increase in our GDP will translate into 34.1 billion in additional revenues. Does it therefore mean a decrease in GDP will also translate into a lower revenue collection because of the non-meeting this target? So in short, dahil hindi po umakyat yung GDP, yung ating additional revenues wala, syempre apektado ang ating revenue collection. So ano na po ang ating projected revenue, ano na po ang ating projected fiscal deficit. Thank you.
Admittedly, Mr. President, that whenever our growth goes down, our revenue collection also goes down. And admittedly, Secretary Recto mentioned also that revenue will go down because of the slowdown in our economic growth. However, because of their wise fiscal management, deficit will still be maintained at 5.5% of our GDP, Mr. President. So in other words, they'll be doing some really very very wise and prudent cash management, Mr. President, in order to maintain our deficit.
We thank you for that, Mr. President.
As targeted, Mr. President.
Thank you. Now, again, this was discussed in the DBCC. I'd like to bring it to plenary as well in light of the targets that we have stated. I'd just like to put into context my question. The government continues to highlight the target of spending. Again, correct me please, the economic team members are here, they're experts. Correct me if my numbers are inaccurate, but this is what I gathered from our DBCC. The target of spending 5.6% of GDP on infrastructure as a driver of economic growth, in line with international evidence or standards, including World Bank studies, showing that public investment can generate medium-term multipliers of around 1.5 when the projects, of course, are well selected and if they're efficiently implemented. There are growing questions about whether current spending levels truly translate into effective and high-quality infrastructure, given all the issues that we are also aware of, and the leakage, systems loss, corruption, and the slowness, everything put into the picture. Taken together, these raise concerns that the reported 5% of GDP may overstate the real value of infrastructure actually benefiting the public, especially if a portion of the budget does not result in durable, well-built, or efficiently delivered projects. Sa madaling salita po, kung sinasabi po ng gobyerno na gumagastos tayo ng 5% ng GDP sa ating infrastruktura, ang tanong, lahat ba po ng pisong yan ay tunay na napupunta sa matinong kalsada, tulay, at mga proyekto? Dahil ayon po sa World Bank, bawat piso ng maayos na infrastruktura ay pwedeng mag-generate sana po ng 1.50 pesos na dagdag na kita o paglago. Gusto ko pong maintindihan ang ating koneksyon ng ating paggastos at ang epekto sa domestic economy.
Actually, if the flood control issue did not happen, we were on track to spend at the very least 5% of our GDP to infrastructure, and that has been the plan of government even during the prior administration, to maintain it at 5% at the very least or more. But because of the flood control issue and the reduction in the flood control budget, we would only hit 4.7% of GDP for 2026. So as much as possible, we diverted some of the flood control projects to infrastructure projects. For example, the suggestion of Senator J.V. Ejercito to put it in airports, put it in seaports. We adopted that so that It forms part of infrastructure spending. We also increase spending in classrooms and also in the repair of classrooms. So we tried as much as we can, to divert some of the funds to infrastructure spending as well. But admittedly, because of the sheer amount of 250 billion, it was quite difficult to cascade it to other infrastructure projects. But definitely, this is only a short-term aberration, only for 2026. Once the DepDev has organized their activity in master planning, the DPWH reforms their process, we will revert back to minimum of 5% GDP in infrastructure spending in the following year.
Thank you for that, and we look forward to that happening. And I'd like to know, Mr. President, I'm sure because of these revelations in the past months, there have been reforms already. There are already safeguards in place, such as strengthened project preparation, independent technical evaluations, improved contractor monitoring, and a more strategic approach to flood control prioritization. Although, as you say, in 2026, there is not a single flood control project. Although, to be fair, flood control is part of climate adaptation.
Just
But
to
for
qualify,
foreign-assisted
meron tayong
projects.
foreign assisted.
Yes.
These are ongoing projects. So just to qualify that.
Yes, for foreign assisted ongoing
assisted.
projects.
Yeah.
Understood. So may this representation and the body be enlightened on reforms and safeguards that are being implemented to ensure that infrastructure spending is not only higher in quantity, itong porsyento, itong malaking bilyon, but more so aligned with the high standards of quality, durability, and value for money, and as you yourself mentioned, like the foreign-assisted projects. And my second question to follow that up is, who implements the foreign-assisted projects? Sinasubcon din yan sa mga Pilipino eh. But why are they supposedly more durable, never ghost, and hopefully not substandard? So those are my two questions. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yeah, well, Mr. President, this is based on my personal experience. When I was a mayor, I remember JICA implemented several projects along Kamanava. And I noticed that a lot of their master planning, detailed engineering, even monitoring are all come from the funder, no? In this case, the Japanese. And they're very strict in terms of quality and standards. Of course, the actual construction will come from the Philippines, construction companies coming from the Philippines. The engineers that they partner with are also Filipinos. But in the selection of those construction companies and engineers are very strict. They really have a high standard of selecting local partners. So in other words, Mr. President, talagang very, very strict po pag foreign-assisted projects ang ini-implement dito sa bansa ho natin. Dahil yung standard nila, ang sinusunod ay Japanese standards.
Yes.
No? So that's why if we see the flood control projects funded by JICA along Pasig River, talagang makikita natin parang Japanese quality po yung ini-implement nila. No? So, but of course, these are loans. These are ODA loans coming from different countries, and ODA loans are also very limited, Mr. President. Hindi natin, we also manage the ODA loans that we contract with different countries because they're still loans. Utang pa rin yan eh. So we need to manage that, Mr. President.
Mr. President, if I may, with the permission of Senator Legarda.
And Mr. President, before we recognize Senator Zubiri, let me congratulate our good majority leader for being one of the recognized individuals in strengthening the Japanese and Philippine relationship. He was recently conferred with a recognition that is really a very unique and a big honor to our country.
I join you, Mr. President, Mr. Chair, in recognizing, appreciating the contributions of our esteemed former Senate President and Majority Leader, and he was granted and bequeathed the highest honor of the Japan government by the Emperor himself, the Order of the Rising Sun.
Grand Cordon Order of the Rising Sun, who was previously awarded to only 3 other senators, Senator Edgardo Angara, Senator Frank Drilon, and Senator Manny Villar. So I'm in great company. But thank you. With the permission of the gentlemen and ladies, I just also want to add that Cagayan de Oro, we suffered, and I'm sure Sakmina is my neighbor in Marawi, and their families from northern Mindanao as well. We were hit by Typhoon Sendong in 2011. I remember because I had just resigned from the Senate at the time, and shortly after those Typhoon Sendong, we lost 1,000 lives. 1,000 people died there. As a matter of fact, it was so bad that it shook the foundation of all the decent people of northern Mindanao to act. Unfortunately, that rainfall came from Bukidnon because we are the highest area in the Mindanao, and we actually contribute to the water, the floodplains of South Cotabato, Maguindanao, Cotabato City, as well as Iligan and Cagayan de Oro. What we finally did was to come up with a river basin plan done by JICA. JICA, the Japan, of course, aid agency, came out with the plan. It was executed. At the time, it was executed by Mayor Oca Moreno, who's a good friend of ours, very decent mayor of Cagayan de Oro. And now it is a model because what they did was it's a mega dike, but with highways on top, parks, well made. It was JICA funded also. And JICA was really on top of everything. And so now, if you look at the area, there's a no-build zone. All the areas within the dike area are no-build. You do not see a single house there. And it's being implemented by the LGUs, subsequent LGUs that followed. And because of that, we've not had, knock on wood, we've not had an episode in Cagayan de Oro. So if it's done properly, one time, big time, done properly, coordinated properly, monitored properly, it can be done. And it's actually featured in many vloggers, and they do a lot of drone shots, and they really see the Cagayan de Oro flood control basin. I would suggest that the departments take a look at that because it's really a success story. And it was done through JICA and implemented with JICA's help and monitoring. I'm saying this not because I am pro-Japan. I just got the highest award, but I'm saying this because it works if done properly. Iligan as well. We did that also for Iligan. So that's what we need to do. I think we need to master plan and follow through with the master plan. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you,
Thank you,
Madam,
Majority Leader, for that
Warren,
intervention.
Mr.
It's
President.
really, most of the funders will follow their own country standards.
Yeah.
If it's Japanese, Japanese standard, Korean standard. And part of their activity is to make sure that the quality is of high standard.
I think the idea there, Mr. President, with the permission again of the two, is that hindi pacha-pacha. When I had a talk one time with Secretary Bonoan, he told me, problema, Migs, yung pondo, hinahati-hati ng mga congressmen or gusto nila dito ilagay. Tapos sa kabilang district, dito ilagay. So nagkakabutas. In what happened in the JICA project, from beginning to end, where the water from the downstream and upstream, talagang walang butas. It was a master plan that was followed through. It was not chop-chop. So I guess if there is budget for flood control next year or the succeeding years, it should be followed through with a master plan that will be done properly, Mr. Chairman. Being the chairman, I think you will also be monitoring this every year for the funding. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Having said that, so we see successful infrastructure programs if they are foreign funded because the foreign funded organizations or countries have very efficient oversight and actually bid it out to some Filipino companies perhaps. Why don't we do that, Mr. President, with all infrastructure programs in the Philippines? why don't we use the same procedure, similar use of organizations, contractors, suppliers, procurement processes, the same program management, oversight being done by foreign assisted projects? What kind of interventions can we do for next year's budget so that each and every peso spent will be spent as if it was from a foreign assisted project? Paano po? Kasi nagaganap naman sa Pilipinas ng maayos kung gugustuhin po.
I think that's the plan of Secretary Dizon this coming New Year's, to make sure that the implementation of projects is also almost as similar as foreign assisted projects in terms of planning, doing the detailed engineering, execution, as well as monitoring, all the way to operationalization of the project, Mr. President. So, narinig ko yan po yung kanyang plano. And when the DPWH budget comes in, we can also scrutinize or ask him about his plans on reforming the process.
Thank you for your answer, Mr. President. I join you in anticipating the implementation of projects the way others can do it efficiently. May I quote, Mr. President, statements this representation has made way back. Magsimula po tayo nung October 12, 2016, nung International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction. May I quote myself? We must invest in disaster risk reduction. It has been estimated that the economic impact of disaster will be reduced by $7 for every dollar spent for DRR. May I read again the Agos Summit on Disaster Preparedness, where I was keynote on July 8, 2017. For every $1 invested in disaster risk reduction, you can save up to $7 in losses. Those were my statements, not made from my imagination, but from United Nations Global Risk Indices. May I also quote, please? Investment in disaster risk reduction generally represents a large saving in terms of avoided losses and reconstruction costs, with cost-benefit ratios ranging from 3:1 to 15:1, or higher in some cases, according to a study published way back in 2015 in the UNDRR's Global Assessment Report on Disaster Risk Reduction. Also, the World Meteorological Organization, or WMO, both the UNDRR and WMO are Geneva-based organizations, believes that $1 invested in prevention could save $7 in recovery. Having said that, Mr. President, may I know, in the way this 2026 NEP was crafted, may I be enlightened, educated, may I feel how the 2015 UNDRR and WMO reports, which are data-driven and science-based, utilized to come up with the National Expenditure Program, which we are studying and contemplating on now. How did we mainstream disaster risk reduction and anticipating disaster losses na nakakatipid po tayo ng $7 sa bawat isang dolyares na ating ini-invest in DRR? If this was not used, I would appreciate an honest answer. If it was used, I want to understand how it was used by the economic team. Ano susunod? Ito. Huwag na to. Ito. Ito.
Thank you, Mr. President, for that question from Senator Lauren. For the 2026 NEP, the budget for adaptation is about 844 million pesos, and the budget for climate mitigation is about 139 million. Anto? Sorry, Mr. President, I didn't see the legend. Let me just repeat. For 2026 NEP, the budget for adaptation is 844 billion pesos. For mitigation is about 139 billion pesos. So the total is about 983 billion pesos for both adaptation and mitigation, Mr. President.
Thank you for that. When you compute the 844 billion for adaptation, this is only a small percentage of the trillions of pesos budget. May I be enlightened, Mr. President, on what are examples of the 844 billion climate adaptation projects and whether it is mainstreamed in government agencies, especially the infrastructure agencies? And may I be enlightened as well how the economic team mainstreams DRR and CCAM in planning for the succeeding fiscal years?
Well, Mr. President, just an initial answer. The adaptation and mitigation have several priorities. For example, food security, water sufficiency, ecosystem and environmental stability, human security, climate smart industries and services, sustainable energy, knowledge and capacity development, and cross-cutting priorities, Mr. President. But we'll get some concrete examples.
I would be happy to put into the record concrete examples, Mr. President. And if I may, I know I sound like a broken record. I've always said this for more than 20 years. We do not allocate an amount for climate adaptation and mitigation or disaster risk reduction. The whole budget must be a climate adaptive budget. The whole budget must work towards reducing disaster loss, whether it is in infrastructure or it is in projects that are non-infra but would lead to education. Since I started helping the budget, if I may, just bear with me please, in 2013, it's always been said, oh, we allocated this amount for climate change. Oh, we did this for DRR. It's, you work in silos. That is not how it should be, Mr. President. It must be mainstreamed in the way we think, we act, we brief, in the way we build, in the way we educate, in the way we do rainwater collectors, in the way we build infrastructure, in the way we build bridges, in the way we build dams, in the way we release water from dams, from dam release protocols to the use of Doppler radars to constructing flood control, dikes, and revetments and infrastructure. It is my sincere desire that the whole budget would focus into CCAM DRR. And this is nothing new, Mr. President. We've been talking about this for 20 years. And I am just somehow sometimes frustrated that in every administration, we always have to put ceilings on adaptation, mitigation, and DRR when it should already be mainstreamed in every government department. Again, not your fault. Again, not the fault of this admin. I've been speaking this way for more than 20 years in this chamber, and I wish we could have a budget that has the template for CCAM, because as I said, for every dollar invested in DRR, we have $7 of recovery that we would not have spent because we did it right at first sight. I would be happy to hear a response from the chair.
Thank you, Mr. President, for that question. I think I joined Senator Lauren during the budget hearing of the Climate Change Commission, and we can task the Climate Change Commission to spearhead a program or a mechanism wherein climate change adaptation and mitigation should be mainstream and embedded in the activities of the different agencies. Come up with the guidelines, come up with some form of template. So in the formulation of their budget, they will already take into consideration climate change mitigation and adaptation in their different PAPs, program activities and projects, Mr. President. So we can, my suggestion is we can mobilize the CCC to do so, Mr. President.
It's a small agency. Perhaps
Ano lang, mga template lang, Mr.
you're
President?
correct. Even the DNR can
Yes,
help.
or the DNR,
Hopefully,
yes.
Because the DA also has their climate change offices. All these agencies have their little bureaus or programs relating to CCAM because it's nothing new. We've been doing this for 20 years.
Correct. We'll
Yes.
request from the economic managers concrete examples on climate change mitigation and adaptation, considering that close to about a trillion pesos actually have been allocated to climate change adaptation and mitigation projects.
Yes. I know that the chair may not be able to read into the record the big ticket items in the 844 billion, but I would be happy to receive from the agencies of government or NEDA or even the LBRMO what are the big ticket items in the 844B that relates or that addresses the issues on climate change adaptation and mitigation.
The DBM will submit to the committee and to your office, to her Honor's office, the breakdown of this climate change adaptation budget of 844 billion, Mr. President. There are components, but concrete examples and also concrete projects.
Yes. Because we can easily say food security. Madali pong pakinggan
Correct,
at magandang pakinggan, pero saan talaga napupunta? Then we could say climate adaptation. And when we look at the fine print, it would be flood control. But what kind of flood control? It should be nature-based, let's say enhancement of mangroves instead of cement. It could be green and not gray. Yeah. Having said that, I would like to go into governance and corruption and macroeconomic impact. So, again, during the DBCC, Mr. President, the medium-term projections, it was said, depend on executing the 1.324 trillion in capital outlays. Again, I would be happy to be corrected if the figures are not accurate. So based on the DBCC, the medium-term projections depend on executing the 1.3 trillion in capital outlays annually and rely on achieving a 5 trillion in revenue collections. Yet governance failures directly constrain project execution and deter investor participation. We all know that and sadly admit it. May this representation be educated? What are the formal mechanisms by which the DBCC, the economic team, will integrate corruption risk metrics and procurement transparency indices into the medium-term fiscal framework and the fiscal forecasts? Should the 2026 budget include perhaps a dedicated allocation, perhaps, I don't know, 5 billion for a substantially enhanced independent audit mechanism as a safeguard against ongoing governance scandals and project failures? I just want to understand what is the game changer that will ensure that we will reach our targets and not speak 1 year from now of the same governance failures. Thank you, Mr. President.
Well, Mr. President, for one, during the budget of the DPWH, we also talked about how to prevent the same issue from happening this coming 2026. And one of the things that we included in the 2026 Senate Committee report is a fund of 2.4 billion pesos for pre-audit, Mr. President, of all DPWH projects. This was recommended by the COA, the Commission on Audit, and at the same time, the DPWH accepted this proposal during that hearing where you were there, Mr. President. So we carved out 2.4 billion to fund COA's pre-audit activities in DPWH. At the same time, DPWH will be using modern technology to make sure that ghost projects will not happen again. So they will use satellite technology that can pinpoint exactly where the projects are, technologies that can be used to validate the projects that are being implemented. So the use of technology will be a key reform that the DPWH will be doing this coming new year, Mr. President.
We can also use the following provisions under the new Procurement Act.
Secretary Pangandaman mentioned to me that under the new Procurement Act, there is an enhanced transparency and accountability mechanism, Mr. President. This is one will be the open data contracting that will ensure open access to procurement processes and contract implementation. The other one is participatory procurement. Empowers observers and civil society organizations in independent oversight and monitoring rules, and beneficial ownership disclosure. Mandates declaration of beneficial owners to detect conflict of interest and prevent circumvention of blacklisting, Mr. President. Those are the mechanisms, Mr. President.
Thank you for that. We anticipate the implementation and hopefully the immediate positive impact of the open governance which the DBM has been championing in the past months.
That's on the procurement side, Mr. President,
Yes.
but on the implementation side, the pre-audit is a major reform that we included in the budget, Mr. President, because in the past, as we have seen in the issues of ghost projects, hindi ho nabibisita ng COA resident auditor, no? Because sa dami pong projects, hindi ho nabibisita lahat. Bayad na, hindi pa rin nila nabibisita. So we're reversing the process by adding more funds, getting more auditors on the ground. So bago po mabayaran yan, definitely mabibisita na nila.
Thank you for that, Mr. President. I know I would like to ask now about budget alignment and project integrity, and allow me to read just the context of my question. The total budget proposals submitted by the national government agencies reached 10.101 trillion. Again, let the executive department correct my figures if it's not accurate. Yet the national expenditure program allocation is constrained to 6.793 trillion, a reduction of 3.3 trillion or approximately 33%. The Department of Budget and Management has cited strict parameters for crafting the NEP, including, and I always hear this term, shovel readiness. Projects must have completed feasibility studies and procurement plans. The prioritization of project completion over new construction, I'm happy to know this. I hope that the unfinished multipurpose and health centers and DepEd school buildings, etc., and bridges will have priority over new construction. And the assessment as well of agency absorptive capacity, and this is often the problem. However, the Senate post-budget hearing summary reveals systemic integrity issues. You yourself have flagged billions. I will not belabor the issue. You mentioned about missing station numbers, etc., and incomplete technical documentation. And many locally funded projects bypass the Public Investment Program, the PIP, as well as the 3-year rolling infrastructure program. We spoke about this during one of the subcommittee hearings, the TRIP requirements, and the lack of rigorous technical validation required for development effectiveness. Foreign-assisted projects also face sometimes persistent delays, which are tied to underfunding in terms of the right-of-way acquisition, contributing to 4-year delays on flagship projects. So my question is, having said that, the Department of Planning, Economy and Development, DepDev, is responsible for the PDP. The DBM manages the budget execution and allocation. How has the DBCC ensured that the 6.793 trillion NEP is rigorously aligned with the PDP priorities and the projects that may not have been included in the PIP and the TRIP, or perhaps lacking in complete feasibility studies, or perhaps have no detailed engineering studies and are systematically excluded then from the budget? Which brings me to the issue of agencies of government always coming to us asking for their priorities that were not included in Tier 1, but they say are priorities, but could not have complied with supposedly the rigorous requirements of the economic team, or of these two agencies I mentioned. So may I know how will the executive department deal with this? From a 10 trillion budget proposals to a 6.7 trillion NEP, so 1/3, 33%, sinantabi. And if you talk to every agency of government, this is the mantra. Sabi po, wag na kaming humingi, pero wag na nyo sasabihin, pero ito po kailangan talaga You know that. All of us here, they come to us with requests. I think the chair would confirm that, right?
Yes, Mr. President.
You have balikbayan boxes of requests.
Yes, Mr. President,
Yeah.
marami ho talaga until now. A lot of agencies, local governments and agencies.
LGUs and NGAs.
NGAs.
Yes.
Big and small NGAs, they're actually coming to request for additional funding. So it's really, Mr. President, as the good gentle lady from Panay knows, it's really about fiscal space, Mr. President. So because of the tight fiscal space, it's very hard to give amounts to agencies that are not in line with the priorities of the President, Mr. President, and also in line with the Philippine Development Plan. So you're absolutely correct that the initial request, actually the initial was 11 trillion, Mr. President. It was trimmed down to 10 trillion. But even at 10 trillion, it cannot be completely allocated. So so the DBM prioritizes making sure that the projects are can be implemented as soon as possible. Although during the hearing, the DBCC hearing, there are still room for improvement in terms of shovel readiness, Mr. President. Nakita natin na maraming mga projects on paper shovel ready pero hindi pa siya talagang shovel ready kasi kulang ng feasibility study or others. So admittedly, the DBM will correct that issue this coming new budget season, Mr. President, to make sure that really projects that are really really shovel-ready will only be included in the proposals, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. So considering that 33% were not included, are we then assured that all of those included in the NEP have complete engineering designs, updated cost estimates, procurement plans were done, and the TRIP, the PIP, and the TRIP were complied with? Itong TRIP, minsan, I'll use a naka-bad trip because we were in a committee hearing. And a small agency, wag niyong sisihin. Ang sagot po ng DBM, again, kaibigan ko ng DBM, kasi walang trip. Naawa ko sa maliit na ahensya, o sige na, National Museum, kaya tinanong ko ngayon, sa bawat hearing, may trip ba kayo? Kasi requirement daw yung trip. And these are multi-year projects. And the answer was, the allocation for 2026 was put to 0 because there is no trip. We were all confused and we asked for a memo on the trip. But I'm happy there should be a
Mr.
trip.
President,
There
yeah.
should be a trip. But then, pag multi-year project at nabigyan nung nakaraang taon, hindi bibigyan ng next year, nakatiwangwang yung building kasi walang trip, hindi ba iniisip yon na at least multi-year? So, again, back to my question. Huwag magagalit ang DBM, gusto ko lang maliwanag kasi. Oo, lahat ba ho na nasa NEP ay merong nakapasa sa DepDev na PDP, PIP, merong trip na maganda naman, dapat kasi talagang pumapasa dyan, at may feasibility studies na detailed engineering designs, which are requirements because yung 33%, diba, hindi na naisama. 3.3 trillion, hindi na isama. We assume na yung sinama ay compliant po. O baka hindi pa rin naman. Just so that we are aware and if we need to cut any further, we still have the time to cut between now and our passage of the Senate version.
Well, Mr. President, I can confidently say that the projects in the DPWH, in the Department of Public Works, under the committee report, has the minimum documents to become shovel-ready. No? Because we also included in the committee report the station numbers of all the projects there. No? So in order to have a station number, kailangan merong detailed engineering, merong ring feasibility study at iba pang mga dokumento. So lahat ho yan meron na sa DPWH projects. And we also remove yung mga doble. How much did we remove yung mga doble? How much? Mga doble? How much? Magkano nga? Yung mga duplicate projects, no, projects that appeared, let's say, in 2024 GAA, 2025 GAA, then reappeared in 2026. We remove all of those. And that amounted to about 4 billion pesos, Mr. President. So, in other words, this list of DPWH projects are vetted properly. Since nawala na po yung flood control projects, nawala na rin po yung issue of not being shovel-ready. No, because yung flood control, that's the component, or that's the group that is actually problematic because wala siyang feasibility study, wala rin siyang detailed engineering. So problematic ho siya. So kung tinanggal ho siya, naiwan roads, bridges, we mandated DPWH to give us the station number. So we're very confident na these are, meron na ho mga detailed engineering itong mga projects na ito.
Thank you for that. May I just say this, that the exclusion, yung pagtanggal po ng flood control at yung pag-retain po ng ibang infrastruktura, I think it does not assure us that the others that are remaining actually complied with all the stringent measures. But I hope that they did. May I therefore be assured if the TRIP has effectively become a gatekeeping mechanism for inclusion in the National Expenditure Program. Simple po, lahat pa ho ng proyekto sa NEP na na-carry po sa GAB na inaaral po natin ay napasa po ng TRIP.
Yeah. Well, I was given the answer given to me by Secretary Pangandaman. It's a mandatory requirement. So all agencies should fulfill the TRIP, the 3-year rolling infrastructure program. However, Mr. President, admittedly, not all the agencies are complying. In fact, some agencies doesn't even know about the TRIP, Mr.
That's why.
President.
So what do we do? May we know, Mr. President? That brings me to my the core issue here. Of those included in the NEP, how many have not complied with the TRIP or the 3-year program for multi-year programs that were actually studied by DepDev? Simple lang po, how many infrastructure projects in the NEP and the present HGAB, which we are studying now, are not TRIP compliant? And what would the executive and the economic team suggest we do with this? If the agencies are not even aware, then how were their projects included in the NEP if they're not even aware of the existence of a requirement of the DepDev and DBM?
President, I was made to. Right now, I was just conferring with with DBM and DepDev. I was made to understand that the TRIP is a mandatory requirement. However, not all the agencies are complying, and it seems to me personally that not all projects are also covered, Mr. President. A case in point here will be the DPWH projects, which actually, kailangan nga ng TRIP.
Yun nga ang kailangan.
Yung mga malalaki nga ho ang kailangan ng
Malalaki,
TRIP because
yes.
the TRIP is supposed to be a master plan for the next 3 years, Mr. President. So we'll urge the DBM and also the DepDev to review this practice, the TRIP practice. On paper, it seems to be a good mechanism, but if it's not going to be implemented strictly across different agencies, parang hindi natin makikita yung kanyang benefit, Mr. President.
May I be informed which agencies are not covered by the TRIP and which agencies are covered but are not compliant? And if they're not compliant, perhaps we can ask from the economic team to identify projects that need to be covered but did not comply so we can actually axe it. Tanggalin. Hindi nag-comply eh. Di ba ganun ba ho? And replace it or realigned further to support other budgetary priorities.
With the PSA and the DSWD with this aspect, Mr. President. So mag-a-adjust ho kasi mga poverty-related programs ho natin. And during the hearing, I remember we asked the PSA about this poverty threshold, also with the adjustments in terms of the number of four-piece beneficiaries, and we adjusted it accordingly, Mr. President.
Thank you for that, and I'm glad the good sponsor mentioned about the SWD and the four-piece program. Maaapekto din yan yung SLP program, yes, as well as not just AIX, SLP, but also the senior citizens pensions. I'm not certain how, which has been in a backlog for a long time. Perhaps the kabuhayan programs of DOLE would also be affected. Perhaps the OST's CES program, Community Empowerment and Grassroots-Based program will be affected, and many other food security programs of DA as well, and the other programs. I hope that, because I will ask each agency about the adjustment in the poverty threshold, because when they prepare their NEP for the July submission, and you said that the PSA had changed the figures, and this is a dramatic increase from 63 to around 135. Is it per person? Because it was 600 plus divided by 5 for a family of 5. So the agencies that prepared their budgets had the 63 in mind. I hope that it's not just the SWD, but I would be happy to be enlightened at the proper time how the agencies adjusted based on the poverty threshold levels of the Statistics Authority.
Yes. Since the PSA is the government's repository of poverty statistics, all programs of the government related to poverty, whether it's in the DSWD or the Department of Agriculture or the Department of Agrarian Reform, they will all refer back to this new poverty data, Mr. President. And the good news is poverty is going down in our country, Mr. President. So meaning income is going up, even though the threshold has gone up, but income is also going up because of job opportunities and also a growing economy, Mr. President.
I will not debate with you regarding that, even if I may have a different point of view, Mr. President. Yes. Okay. May I know, before we leave the topic, Mr. President, it's 135 per person? Just so that is PSA present here? Yes. Yes. More or less 135 per person. Is this for the daily allocation for food and other expenses? Can they break it down? Magkano po ang pagkain divided by 3 meals a day? How much per meal? And is this for NCR or is it across the board in every province?
Yes, Mr. President, this 135 is for NCR, Mr. President.
Mm-hmm.
And we can...
It's time to leave a half 35
out of the 35 peso per person per day, Mr. President, 85 pesos is allocated to food, Mr. President.
Okay. 85 divided by
3.
3.
This is
7 pesos per meal. Sige, I will not belabor the point because it's very painful, even if we increased it already. Nagbibiro ako dito, pero hindi biro. Subukan natin kung paano yung 130 a day. Kung magtatanim ka naman ng sariling pagkain mo, baka sakaling kasya. And my final question for the moment, Mr. President. For, again, these are the figures that I have. Please correct me if the figures are not accurate. For 2026, the government expects to raise revenues in the amount of 4.938.4 billion, while disbursement is projected to reach 6.630 billion, or a deficit of 1.626 billion. Assuming my figures are accurate, we would see that disbursement for the current operating expenditures is expected to reach 5,020 billion, which is 37.3 billion higher than the revenue we will generate, which means obviously that our current operating expenses will be partially paid by our borrowings. Our current operating expenses, sweldo, diba? Salaries, bonuses, traveling, domestic and foreign, interest payments, local and foreign, janitorial services, utilities, financial subsidy, etc. Mr. President, how will would you confirm that our borrowings, hihiram po tayo, uutang po tayo para bayaran ang sweldo ng mga tao sa gobyerno? In short, our borrowings, our loans will go to our operating expenses and not to capital outlay that will go to the creation of jobs and that will spur the local economy. And may I know how many years have we been experiencing this, and how do we get out of it progressively, hopefully in the future, in the near future? Please educate me. Anong listahan ko ng GOCCs?
Mr. President, in an ideal situation, we only need to borrow for capital expenditures, meaning all of our collections should go to current operating expenditures, meaning for salary payments, pangbayad ng kuryente, pangbayad ng tubig, bonuses, all of that should be funded by our own revenues. But there's a small shortfall in terms of our collection versus current operating expenses of about 37 billion, Mr. President. So it's a small shortfall. So two-prong approach, Mr. President. One is to collect efficiently, meaning our revenues, whether tax or non-tax, should be collected efficiently so that we can cover our current operating expenses. Number two is also cut on some of our current operating expenses. Secretary Recto mentioned that in his estimate, they can still reduce MOE by about 160 billion, meaning reduce some of the traveling expenses, some of the MOE expenses. So tingin niya kaya pang bawasan doon so that we can finance our current operating expenses by our own revenue, not to borrow, Mr. President. But maliit lang naman po yung maliit lang naman yung ating shortfall on that effect, Mr. President. So I believe that with the efficient collection, government can cover that, Mr. President. But you're right, Mr. President. In an ideal situation, we should not borrow to cover our current operating expenses.
Mr. President, is the 37.3 billion for 2026 that will be brought about by borrowings, is it also because of extracting or borrowing or getting the reserves of GOCCs? Were we able to contract that or limit the utilization of borrowed money because we also used what we have, the reserves of government agencies, GOCCs?
Yes,
In the-
Mr.
in-
President, because that was allowed in 2024, Mr. President. There's a special provision that allowed the DOF to sabi ko allowed, sabi ni Secretary Recto, mandated, but authorized, no? Authorized the DOF. I think malaking debate ito, Mr. President. But because of that fourth special provision, Secretary Recto is saying that the DOF was mandated to take or collect excess reserve funds from different government agencies, Mr. President, to address that shortfall para hindi na ho tayo umutang to cover our current operating expenses.
Yung
It's a cash management mechanism, Mr. President.
dahil po tayo'y may reserves o savings
Na hindi naman
sa
nagagamit.
GOCCs
Yeah.
na hindi nagagamit at ayon po sa special provision na sana'y basahin nyo para hindi na po nakasaad sa 2026 or if you
No more, Mr. President. That special provision is no longer
no
in
longer
the
there.
2026
Sa
budget.
2025 wala rin po.
Wala rin, Mr. President.
Yes. Can you read into the record the 2024 special provision? And do you, if you say that government was mandated to follow it because there was such special provision, but it will no longer be there in GAA 2026, and it is not in GAA 2025?
It's in special provision. Anong number to? Special provision D. Fund balance of the government-owned and controlled corporations from any remainder resulting from the review and reduction of the reserve funds to reasonable levels, take into account the disbursements from prior years, Mr. President. Ito pala, mayroon palang susunod. The Department of Finance shall issue the guidelines to implement this provision within 15 days from effectivity of this act. Yan. Yan pala yung sinasabi ni Secretary Recto, Mr. President.
That was only for 1 year, Mr.
Only for 1 year,
President.
Mr. President.
Yes. Which GOCC was that? Was this the PhilHealth?
PDIC and PhilHealth, Mr. President.
What was the total then? PDIC was how much, Mr. President?
107. For PhilHealth, Mr. President, it's 60, and for PDIC, it's 107 billion, Mr. President.
PDIC, magkano po?
107 billion.
107B.
B.
And PhilHealth,
16.
yes. Are we supposed to pay back PDIC for 107B? No, no need.
Mr. President, according to Secretary Recto, no need to return the funds, Mr. President. They have more than adequate resources to cover what they need to cover, Mr. President. For PDIC. For PDIC.
How about for
banks.
PhilHealth, the 60 billion? Yes. There's been a clamor and the President has repeatedly committed to return the 60 billion to PhilHealth.
Yes,
reserves.
Mr. President, in the Senate committee report, we're returning the 60 billion. It was also included in the gap, Mr. President.
Just to be clear, Mr. President, the NEP with the 60B, I think Senator Pia will question during her time in DOH, ayokong pangunahan si Senator Pia, that the computation may not have been accurate based on the syntax law, but let her explain that. And clearly, the 60 billion, again, I'm not certain if that's accurate, is not the payment for PhilHealth because that is the allocation based on the implementation of the sin tax law. So hindi po yun. Earmark na po yun. Yan, alam ng health advocate expert. So we're not referring to the net allocation. You mentioned, Mr. Chair, about the HGAB, which has another 60B. But the 60B from HGAB, Mr. President, came from the flood control. If I'm not mistaken, please correct me if I'm wrong. It came from an agency, perhaps the DPWH flood control, which was moved pambayad utang sa reserves ng PhilHealth. Is that how it moved? So that it's clear. Because dalawang 60, first is the implementation of the sin tax law, which should not be claimed as the return to PhilHealth reserves. And the second, HGAB, yun ang pambayad utang. I just want to know where did it come from in the HGAB, and that's included in our Senate committee report, and we are grateful to your honor that it was included as well. I just want to be certain where did it come from.
But Mr. President, originally in the NEP, there was a 53 billion subsidy to PhilHealth, and that is supposed to be coming from the sin tax allocation, Mr.
Yes.
President. And the 60 billion, you're right, Mr. President, it was carved out of the flood control, is meant to return that 60 billion pesos that was remitted to National Treasury,
Yes.
Mr. President.
Thank you for that answer, Mr. President. So it's very clear we have the earmarked allocation based on an existing law, sin tax, na ayon sa ilan sa ating kasamahan ay kulang, but we'll tackle that in the DOH budget. Now, yung bayad utang po sa tinanggal noong 2024 ay nasa HGAB, which is Senate retained. Yes. But my question is, we, or the government, the executive, took it out from reserves of PhilHealth. Should it not return it there? And in what process should it be returned? Because it is going to be in the GAA with earmarked expenditures, not in the reserves of PhilHealth where it came from. So may I be informed in short, ano po ang tamang bayad utang na kinuha po sa PhilHealth noong 2024?
Okay, Mr. President, I was just clarified that the 60 billion that was taken from PhilHealth did not come from the reserves, Mr. President. It was a fund balance, meaning yun talaga yung natitira nila na actively being used for their case rates, Mr. President. So, since it was substantial at that point, yun ang renimit sa National Treasury.
Can
So
you
that will
kindly
be
explain?
returned in the same form as fund balance.
The 2024 na kinuha po ng DOF, is it DOF? That took away from PhilHealth did not come from the reserves.
No, Mr. President, that was
What do you call it? It came from the operating
fund balance.
expense. Fund balance. Okay.
The fund balance. So it's a different fund from the reserve, Mr. President.
The fund balance. So you're correct in saying that under the NEP of 2026 na 53.26B, hindi ito yung bayad utang. And then the 60 billion in the 2026 House Bill, GAB, ito yung bayad utang, but it is intended for benefit package improvement under the Universal Healthcare Law. Is it a lump sum? Is it already allocated, earmarked? And would this, saan po nanggaling ito? if it's not from DPWH flood control, but it came from the NEP. It came from somewhere, an agency.
But
Yeah.
Mr. President, before I answer that, Secretary Recto clarified that because of PhilHealth's improved operations and improved case rates and improved in the efficiency in dispersing their funds, as well as the implementation of the zero balance billing. This coming 2026 will see a full implementation of the zero balance billing program. The government decided to give additional or augment the PhilHealth with 60 billion pesos, Mr. President. So sabi niya hindi ho to bayad utang. No, kasi walang utang raw, Mr. President. So there's no utang to speak of, Mr. President. So
Magtatanong tuloy si
of course that is the
Okay.
so that's one, Mr. President. Number two, what you were mentioning, their next question, your other question, Mr. President, it came from the flood control, Mr. President, because the amount is about 255 billion. So 60 billion was carved out to be the subsidy of to be the subsidy to PhilHealth, Mr. President.
Thank you for that, Mr. President. Just definition of terms so we understand. Fund balance of government-owned and controlled corporations from any remainder resulting from the review and reduction of the reserve funds to reasonable levels, taking into account the disbursements from prior years. Can you kindly explain the difference between fund balance and reserve funds, and what was the basis for the extraction or pagkuha po sa fund balance ng PhilHealth as opposed sa pagkuha sa reserve funds? Since you corrected me, hindi pala galing sa reserve funds ang kinuha ng executive kung hindi galing sa fund balance. Nang galing po sa inyo yon para lang maintindihan po namin. May utang ang gobyerno sa PhilHealth kasi walang earmark allocation. Saka wala, ngayong taon. Wala, ayun pa, kailangan bayaran. Kasi galing sa syntax law, wala. So, tatlong
But Mr. President, sorry for the delay. I just want to make sure and so that I can explain it as simple as possible. So the fund balance is the money available after deducting the expenditures for their case rates, Mr. President. So meaning benefits for their members, meaning ito yung natitira after their revenues, after their subsidies, and after their expenses. So merong natitira doon close to about 480 billion at that time. And because of that surplus fund of 480 billion, the DOF, the PhilHealth remitted 60 billion from that 480 billion, Mr. President. That's outside of the reserve fund. Hindi pa ho yung nasa reserve fund. No?
Yeah, thank you for that, Mr. President. Para po maliwanag, yung sa NEP 2026 na 53.26B, hindi po ito yung bayad utang, kung ano man tawagin natin, ito po ay alokasyon ayon sa syntax law.
Yes,
Yung
Mr. President.
linagay po sa GAB na 60B na nanggaling din po sa loob ng NEP, galing po sa flood control, as you said.
Yes, Mr.
Ito
President.
po yung galing sa fund balance, yung
Yes, yun po
extra-
yung... Yeah.
extra funds po sa PhilHealth na para po palitan yung kinuha ng 2024. Is that correct, Mr. President?
Well,
My
Mr.
understanding.
President, it's a difference in nomenclature dahil wala naman po, technically wala pong utang. So, wala pong binabayaran na utang. Pero binabalik lang yung 60 billion.
Sinoli.
Sinole. Siguro
yun.
that's a right term.
I mean, it's-
Sinole.
Okay.
No?
So if you don't like to consider bayad utang,
hindi bayad
kasi
utang
wala
ho.
naman kontratang umutang.
Correct.
So,
Tama. Sinoli lang po yung 60 billion because
sinoli.
nag-improve na yung... Una-una, tumaas yung case rates. No?
Okay.
And then pangalawa, nag-improve na yung efficiency.
What is the right word so that I use what is
Return,
correct?
I think. Or
Hiniram.
Restore or return
Restored.
the 60 Restored. Oo.
So it was borrowed.
No, hindi ho utang siya. It was
Hindi utang, walang interest. Hindi
correct.
utang.
Tsaka hindi ho
Sige.
siya rinimit ho because of the excess fund balance.
So it was transferred and now it's being returned. Ayun.
Yes, it was
That's the politically correct term.
it is
Mr.
the
Chair.
technically correct term, Mr. President.
Okay, para lang maliwanag po, may pangatlo pa pong alokasyon na hindi ko pa nakikita. Ay yung earmarking po ng syntax law na nasa NEP ng 2025 ay wala po sa GAA 2025. I understand there is no subsidy for PhilHealth this year. Ito po yung issue na sinabi din ni Senator Ontiveros. I think she will ask that as well. So, naghahanap po kami ng tatlong 60B. Yung sa NEP 2026, ayon kay Senator Pia, siya na magtatanong kulang. Yung hiniram pero sinole, nasa GAB, nandyan na po. Sana wag mawala hanggang BICAM. Pero yung NEP ng 2025 po, na alokasyon ng PhilHealth ayon sa batas, ay wala po sa GAA 2025. I believe it is our duty to give to PhilHealth, because the earmarked allocation from syntax law did not appear in the GAA 2025. I'm just stating that. I am not the chairman of the committee, but that is what the principal author of the Universal Healthcare Law and the Healthcare Advocate, Senator Risa and Senator Pia, have told me, which I joined them in that advocacy. I just like to put on record, we are grateful that the HGAB carried the 60B and it's been returned from the 2024 taken out item, if you don't like to use borrowed amount. But the earmarked syntax allocation in 2025 is missing. Again, I would be happy to be corrected if I am inaccurate.
Well, Senator Lauren is absolutely correct that because Congress took out, I'm just checking the amount, about 74 billion pesos in 2015, no? 2025. So, in other words, that 2025 allocation for PhilHealth is supposed to be remittances from syntax.
Siguro po,
Mr. President. And that is,
Nawala po yun.
nawala yun. Tama ho kayo.
Ah,
Tama ho kayo.
don't we owe it to the people, Mr. Chair, that we cut more in infrastructure that are not compliant with TRIP or coordinates, as you would say it, etc., and put back what was missing in GAA 2025? Para po naibalik na natin ng gobyerno lahat ng nawala sa PhilHealth.
Yan po ay pag-uusapan natin. Admittedly, the amounts are quite substantial, no? 70 billion pesos. Pero I get the point of Her Honor, Senator Lauren, and definitely po na dapat lang ho natin ibigay sa PhilHealth yung dapat ibigay, no? Ayon sa batas.
Kung
At ayon sa
nagkamali po,
batas,
yeah.
yung syntax, meron ho silang share doon.
Yes. Kung nagkamali po at nawala sa GAA 2025, kayo po ang natalagang chair ngayon. At kayo po ay sumasang-ayon sa akin na karapat-dapat lang ayon sa batas ay nandun siya sa taong ito. Tingin ko po ating katungkulan na ilagay po doon. At kung hindi, tingin ko, hindi ako nagdidikta, ilagay sa NEP 2027 na kasama pa rin yung earmark allocation dodoble dahil nawala noong 2025.
Pag-aralan ho natin.
This is
Thank you
my
for the
suggestion.
suggestion. And thank you for pointing that out, Senator Lauren. It's a very good point. Important. Pag tinignan ho natin yung malalaking increases sa Senate version, unang-una sa edukasyon, pangalawa sa health. No? Dahil binibigyan natin ng napakalaking pahalaga po ang kalusugan ng ating mga kababayan. At especially after the pandemic, marami ho tayong mga kababayan talagang gustong makita na ma-improve po yung ating healthcare system. So pag-aaralan ho natin mabuti ho yan. Decision na ho to ng Kongreso at Senado. In fact, dahil Kongreso at Senado po ang nagtanggal ng pondo na yan in 2025.
Hindi po ako pumirma ng BICAM kasi hindi po ako sang-ayon doon.
Yeah, kaya po, pag-aaralan ho natin mabuti yan.
Thank you for the openness of the chair. Thank you for agreeing with your colleagues. We just want to be compliant with the law and we mean well, but we are also understanding of the limited fiscal space. That's why we presented options to the body. Last na po. Warningan ako, 3 oras na po. Last na po. Binanggit po ninyo na uutang tayo para sa mga sweldo. Ay, magtatanong si... I'm sorry. Yeah.
Mr. President, Senator Tiveros is seeking the floor for a short manifestation.
Senator Diveros, you're recognized.
Salamat, Mr. President, at sa gentlelady from Panay at sa ating chair. Nagpapasalamat po ako sa pagtulak ni Senator Lawrence sa isyung ito at sa pagbibigay daan din ng chairman. Gaya ng sinabi nilang dalawa, we are talking of at least 3 important items here na may kinalaman sa PhilHealth. At nagpapasalamat ako sa kanilang dalawa, Mr. Chairman, lumilinaw na mayroong earmark proceeds from sin taxes na dapat na ibigay sa PhilHealth itong kasalukuyang taong 2025. Mayroon pong item na pinopropose para sa appropriation ng Kongreso mula sa executive para sa PhilHealth ngayong susunod na taong 2026 at may pangatlong item na itinanggal noong 2024 sa kasalukuyang 2025 budget. Kung bakit katulad ni Senator Lauren, ako hindi po pumirma sa BICAM version nung nakaraang taon para sa kasalukuyang taon at kalaunan kami po ni dating Minority Leader Senator Coco Pimentel ay bumoto ng no sa kasalukuyang budget. Bukod pa dun sa napag-usapan namin earlier ni Mr. Chair tungkol sa unprogrammed appropriations. Pero yung usapin po ng termino ay napaka-importante. Hindi po ito nomenclature lang at hindi po sasapat ang pagiging technical lamang. We have to call a spade para matuto tayo sa ating mga pagkakamali o pagkukulang at hindi tayo uulit at ma-institutionalize din po natin ang best practices. At sabi din po kasi ng mga lola natin, cuentas claras. So anuman ang itawag ng DBCC o DOF ngayon na sasabihin nila, hindi po ito surplus funds. At I remember nung simula ng debating iyan, tinawag nila itong excess funds. Kung kinuha man nila ito o hindi sa surplus talaga ng PhilHealth. Pero naalala ko, hindi lang yung tayo, karamihan nating mga miyembro ng PhilHealth, pero PhilHealth mismo ay hindi magaan sa loob nila. May sama ng loob sa loob ng PhilHealth. Kinuha po yung 60 billion pesos na iyan. At ang anumang bagay na kinuha na sa tingin ng marami ay hindi dapat kinuha, ay dapat itala natin bilang utang. Kaya po may mga health reform advocates na nagkaso laban sa atin sa gobyerno, sa Supreme Court, at iniintay pa natin ang ruling doon. At palagay ko, at gusto kong maniwala, kaya iniutos pa nga ni Presidente na isauli ang 60 billion pesos mula sa national government pabalik sa PhilHealth. So, anong tawag ko sa isang bagay na iniintay nating iutos ng Korte Suprema at una nang iniutos ng Presidente na ibalik? Ang tawag ko po dyan, Mr. President, ay utang. And sana mauna na ang national government magsauli niyang utang bago pa iutos yan, harinawa ng Korte Suprema. So, I will be merely manifesting briefly about this issue this afternoon, pero itatanong ko ng mas detalyado pag-consider natin ang DOH budget, Mr. Chair, at itatanong ko rin sa panahong iyan sa DBCC o sa DOF, saan po ginamit yung 60 billion pesos na kinuha noon sa PhilHealth at ngayon, sa tingin ko lamang po, at ayon na rin sa utos ni Presidente at sana sa magiging ruling ng Korte Suprema, ay utang na dapat ibalik sa PhilHealth. So maraming salamat po, Mr. Chair, Senator Loren at Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Risa.
And likewise, Mr. President, before Senator Loren resumes, just for the record, the total syntax collections for 2024 is 295.65 billion. So, if we're to follow the law, earmark is 80% of the 50% collection syntax and sweetened beverage for PhilHealth and universal healthcare. Just for the record, Mr. President.
All right, you may continue, Senator Loren.
Thank you, Mr. President. Having said that, may we request the DBCC to submit, please, the utilization of the 60B that was borrowed but returned. Yes, or maybe it was not used because it's being returned. If it was used, may we know the utilization?
Actually, I have it now, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President.
27 billion went to public health emergency benefits and allowances for healthcare and non-healthcare workers during COVID-19 pandemic. 10 billion for medical assistance to indigent and financially incapacitated patients, also known as MAIP. 4.1 billion for procurement of various medical equipment for DOH hospitals, LGU hospitals, and primary care facilities. 3.3 billion for construction of 3 DOH health facilities. 1.6 billion for health facilities enhancement program. And 13 billion for mandatory government counterpart financing for foreign-assisted infrastructure and social development programs that will accelerate the delivery of healthcare services to remote areas and enhance the health and well-being of Filipinos by ensuring food security. So, yun po yung pinuntahan po ng pondo.
Thank you for that and being ready with that, Mr. Chair. Just a heads up to DOH, we I'm sure our colleagues will ask them if they, because of their very low absorptive capacity, especially since you mentioned they created or built health infrastructure for needy populations, etc. I hope they were able to do that. And I hope the funds are not with them still with half-constructed health centers and hospitals. So just so that they will be ready to explain to the body the utilization and implementation of such. Huli na po, dahil binanggit nyo na hihiram pa tayo ng 37.5 billion at sabi nyo ito'y maliit naman na amount para gamitin sa operating expense. Simple thinking, di ba ho, pag uutang pa tayo sa household para lang sa operating expense, di babaan na lang natin ating gastos para wag na tayong umutang.
Mr. President, that's
Okay.
why Secretary Recto proposed in his estimate that MOE across different agencies can still be cut by about 160 billion, Mr. President.
160B.
Yes, Mr. President.
Yes. And
So that is that's making expenses more efficient.
may we know whether that is already contained in the Senate committee report?
No, Mr. President, I just this was just conferred to me today, Mr. President.
We're happy to note that the 160B cut in operating expenses, and that, of course, from 6.792 trillion with our cuts in questionable infrastructure projects and a further cut in operating expenses kung saan po tayo makakatipid. Does it mean, Mr. President, that we do not have to use our borrowings or our loans for salaries, utilities, and whatever operating expenses of government, Mr. President?
Theoretically, yes, Mr. President, because the as I noted earlier, the balance between revenues and current operating expenses is negative 37 billion, Mr.
Yeah.
President. So theoretically less. So we don't have to borrow 37 billion to finance our operating expenses, Mr. President.
Thank you for that, Mr. President. We will anticipate or look forward to seeing which of the MOE expenses in which government agencies will be cut. We will see. At the same time, we are also looking forward to reading the agencies which are non-trip compliant and the action which the chair will take in the non-trip compliant government agencies, assuming it is really a strict requirement of the DBCC and the economic team. I will yield now to my other colleagues, Mr. President. I truly appreciate your patience, your honesty and candor, and the economic team as well, so that we better understand the budget and we see how we can further bring down the losses and the system's loss, etc., so to speak. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, may I request for a few minutes suspension?
All right. Thank you, Senator Luganda. Yes, session is suspended for a few minutes.